I lost my dad, a small boy whispered, his voice trembling as tears welled in his blue eyes, alone on a swing set in Riverside Park. Enter Harper Jones, a 34-year-old black kindergarten teacher whose simple act of kindness, tying his shoes and weaving tales of spy squirrels, sets the stage for an extraordinary love story. What begins as a chance encounter with a lost child named Parker and his grateful father Oliver Reed, a billionaire in hiding, unravels into a journey of connection, secrets, and unexpected romance. Where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments and share your guess. Will Harper and Oliver's bond withstand the chaos of his hidden world? Subscribe to our channel for the latest stories and join us to discover if a moment of compassion can rewrite their futures. What secrets lie behind Oliver's guarded smile? The sun hung low over Riverside Park, painting the sprawling lawns and winding paths in hues of amber and gold. Children's laughter echoed from the playground, a symphony of carefree joy, while the scent of blooming jasmine drifted on the warm breeze. Harper Jones, a 34-year-old black kindergarten teacher, settled onto a weathered wooden bench, her sensible flats kicked off, toes curling into the cool grass. Her sleek black hair, meticulously gathered and secured with an elegant gold hairpin, caught the fading light, glinting like a quiet promise of grace. Harper's life was a relentless tide. Mornings spent corralling exuberant 5-year-olds, weekends tutoring to make ends meet, and evenings tending to her Aunt Clara, whose recent surgery had left her frail but fierce. Today, though, was a rare gift. A canceled tutoring session, 2 precious hours carved out for herself. She closed her eyes, letting the park's hum wash over her, a fleeting escape from the weight of her responsibilities. Her moment of peace was shattered with a soft, stifled sob. Harper's eyes snapped open, scanning the playground. There, on a swing set across the sandy expanse, sat a small boy, alone. His blonde hair fell in a messy curtain over his face, his shoulders trembling as he gripped the swing's chains with tiny white-knuckled hands. He couldn't have been more than 6. His green t-shirt emblazoned with a rocket ship, its vibrant print at odds with his hunched, sorrowful posture. His sneakers, scuffed and worn, dangled above the ground, laces trailing like forgotten promises. Harper glanced around. No parents, no guardians, just the boy, adrift in a sea of playing children. Something tugged at her heart, a familiar instinct honed by years of soothing scraped knees and wiping away tears in her classroom. She stood, brushing grass from her simple yellow sundress, and approached slowly, her steps deliberate to avoid startling him. Kneeling a few feet away, she softened her voice to a gentle hum, the kind that had calmed countless kindergartners. "Hi there," she said, her warm brown eyes meeting his. "Are you okay?" The boy's head lifted, revealing wide blue eyes brimming with tears, his lower lip quivering like a leaf caught in a storm. "I can't find my dad," he whispered, his voice so small it seemed to dissolve into the air. Harper's chest tightened. She knew that fear, the kind that makes the world feel too big, too empty. "That must be really scary," she said, keeping her tone steady, a lifeline in his trembling world. "My name's Harper. What's yours?" "Parker," he mumbled, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his t-shirt. Harper smiled, a quiet reassurance. "Well, Parker, I bet your dad's looking for you right now. How about I stay with you until he finds you?" Relief flickered across Parker's face, his shoulders easing slightly as he nodded, a tiny gesture of trust. Harper settled onto her knees in the sand, ignoring the grains that clung to her dress. She pointed to his untied laces, dangling dangerously. "Want me to fix those for you? It'll make walking safer when we find your dad." Parker nodded again, his eyes following her hands as she deftly looped the laces into neat bows, her fingers moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd tied countless tiny shoes. As she worked, Harper kept the conversation light, drawing him out of his fear. "So Parker, that rocket on your shirt is pretty cool. You like space stuff?" His eyes lit up just a little. "Yeah, I have a book about stars and rockets." Harper grinned, seizing the spark. "Oh, you're a space explorer, huh? What's your favorite planet?" Parker hesitated, then said, "Mars, 'cause it's red and has robots." Harper laughed softly, her voice a warm melody. "Mars is awesome. I bet you'd build the best rocket to get there." Parker's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile breaking through his worry. To keep his mind off his missing father, Harper scanned the playground for a distraction. A squirrel darted across the grass, its bushy tail flicking like a secret signal. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "See that squirrel over there? I'm pretty sure it's a spy." Parker's brows furrowed, confusion replacing some of his fear. "A spy?" Harper nodded, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Oh, that's no ordinary squirrel. It's reporting to the Squirrel Space Agency, probably gathering intel on us right now." Parker's mouth fell open. Then he giggled, a small, bright sound that cut through the tension. "That's not real," he said, but his eyes followed the squirrel, now nibbling a nut behind a tree. "Oh no, then why's it taking notes behind that tree?" Harper pointed, her face mock serious. Parker laughed again, a real laugh this time, his shoulders shaking with delight instead of fear. They began weaving a story together about the Squirrel Space Agency, its secret missions, and how this particular squirrel was plotting to steal Parker's rocket ship t-shirt for its galactic headquarters. Harper's animated gestures and dramatic whispers pulled Parker further from his panic, his small face brightening with each new twist in their tale. She felt a quiet pride watching him relax, her teacher's instinct humming with satisfaction. The playground's chatter faded as a man's voice cut through, sharp with desperation. "Parker!" Harper's head turned, and she saw a tall figure sprinting across the lawn, his blonde hair catching the sunlight, his face etched with raw panic. Parker's eyes widened. "Dad!" he shouted, leaping from the swing and running toward the man, who scooped him into a fierce hug, his broad shoulders sagging with relief. The man, dressed in a simple white t-shirt and jeans, held Parker tightly, as if afraid he'd vanish again. Harper stood, brushing sand from her hands, her heart settling at the reunion. The man looked up, his blue eyes locking onto hers over Parker's shoulder. Gratitude flooded his expression, but there was something else. Surprise, perhaps, or a flicker of wariness. "He's okay," Harper said, her smile warm and steady. "Just a little scared. We made friends with some spy squirrels while we waited." The man set Parker down, keeping a protective hand on his son's shoulder. "Thank you," he said, his deep voice thick with emotion. "I turned away for a moment to answer a call, and he was gone." Parker tugged at his father's sleeve, his voice bright. "She's nice, Dad. She tied my shoes and told me about spy squirrels." The man's gaze softened as he took in Harper, her yellow sundress, the gold hairpin glinting in her hair, the kindness in her eyes. "I'm Oliver," he said, extending a hand. "Oliver Reed." "Harper Jones," she replied, shaking his hand, his grip firm yet gentle, lingering a moment longer than necessary. An awkward silence fell, the air charged with something unspoken. Harper grabbed her purse, ready to retreat to her quiet life. "I should go. I'm glad you're okay, Parker." She winked at the boy, who grinned back, his earlier fear forgotten. "Wait," Oliver said, his voice quick, almost urgent. "Can I buy you a coffee to thank you? There's a cafe just across the street." Harper hesitated, her practical side warning against lingering with a stranger, even one with kind eyes and a charming son. But Parker's hopeful smile and Oliver's earnest tone tugged at her. "I have about an hour," she said, surprising herself. Oliver's face lit up, a mix of relief and something warmer. As they walked toward the cafe, Parker skipping ahead, Harper felt a spark, a quiet, dangerous flicker of possibility. She pushed it down, telling herself it was just coffee, just gratitude. But as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this act of kindness, was the start of something far bigger than she could imagine. The Riverside Cafe sat nestled across from the park, its weathered awning casting a cozy shade over a handful of outdoor tables. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries, a warm hum of conversation mingling with the clink of cups. Harper Jones followed Oliver Reed and his son Parker through the glass door, her yellow sundress swaying slightly as she moved. Her gold hairpin caught the soft glow of the cafe's pendant lights, a quiet elegance that matched the steady kindness in her brown eyes. She told herself this was just a thank you, a polite gesture after helping a lost child. But the flutter in her chest hinted at something more. Oliver held the door, his blue eyes meeting hers with a gratitude that felt heavier than words could carry. Parker, clutching a small backpack, skipped ahead, his rocket ship t-shirt a bright splash of green against the cafe's muted tones. They settled at a corner table by a window overlooking the park, where the playground swings still swayed gently in the evening breeze. Parker plopped into a chair, his earlier fear replaced by a 6-year-old's restless energy. Oliver pulled a coloring book and crayons from his backpack, setting them before Parker with a practiced ease that spoke of countless such moments. "Here you go, buddy," he said, his deep voice soft but firm. Parker grinned, diving into the pages, his small hands scribbling a rocket blasting through a starry sky. Harper watched, a smile tugging at her lips. She knew that look, the fierce focus of a child lost in their world, a sight she cherished in her kindergarten classroom. Oliver turned to her, his expression a mix of relief and something harder to name. Curiosity, perhaps, or a cautious openness. "What can I get you?" he asked, standing. "Coffee? Tea? Something sweet?" Harper hesitated, unused to being on the receiving end of such attention. "A latte, please," she said, then added with a playful glance at Parker. "And maybe something chocolate for our space explorer." Parker's head popped up, eyes wide. "Chocolate milk?" Oliver chuckled, a low, warm sound that eased the tension in Harper's shoulders. "You got it," he said, heading to the counter. As Oliver ordered, Harper leaned toward Parker, her voice light. "That's a pretty cool rocket you're coloring. Planning a trip to Mars?" Parker nodded, his crayon pausing mid-stroke. "Yeah, I'm gonna find aliens. They're probably green, like my shirt." Harper laughed, her teacher's instinct kicking in. "Green aliens would love your shirt. Maybe they'd trade you some space rocks for it." Parker's giggle was infectious, and for a moment, Harper forgot the weight of her own life. Her endless teaching days, the worry over Aunt Clara's health, the bills that always seemed to outpace her paycheck. Oliver returned with a tray, a steaming latte for Harper, black coffee for himself, and a tall glass of chocolate milk for Parker, complete with a striped straw. "You're spoiling him," Harper teased, accepting her cup. Oliver's lips quirked into a half-smile, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his composed exterior. "He deserves it after today," he said, his voice quieter now, laced with the lingering fear of losing his son. He sat across from her, his broad frame filling the chair, yet there was a gentleness in his posture, a careful deference as he studied her. "I can't thank you enough, Harper. Most people would have walked by, but you stayed." Harper sipped her latte, the warmth spreading through her, though she wasn't sure if it was the coffee or Oliver's earnest gaze. "I couldn't just leave him," she said simply. "He was scared. Anyone would have done the same." Oliver shook his head, his blue eyes steady. "No, they wouldn't. Trust me." There was a weight to his words, a hint of a story untold, but he didn't elaborate. Instead, he leaned back, stirring his coffee, the spoon clinking softly against the mug. "You're a teacher, right? Parker mentioned you teach kindergarten." Harper nodded, her face lighting up. "Yeah, I teach at Willow Creek Elementary, 22 5-year-olds, all with more energy than a rocket launch." She laughed, but her eyes softened with affection. "It's exhausting, but I love it. They see the world so differently. Everything's a wonder, you know? Like Parker with his spy squirrels." Parker looked up, grinning. "They're still out there, Harper, watching us." She gasped dramatically, playing along. "You're right. I bet they're spying on your chocolate milk right now." Parker clutched his glass protectively, giggling. Oliver watched the exchange, his expression shifting from gratitude to something warmer, more curious. "You're good with him," he said almost to himself. "He doesn't warm up to people easily," Harper shrugged, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. "Kids are honest. If you listen, they let you in." She paused, then ventured, "He's lucky to have you. Not every dad would sprint across a park like that." Oliver's smile faded slightly, a shadow crossing his face. "I try," he said, his voice low. "It's just the two of us now." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Harper sensed a boundary, a line she wouldn't cross. Not yet. Instead, she steered the conversation to safer ground. "So, Parker's into rockets. What about you? Were you a space nerd as a kid?" Oliver's tension eased, and he leaned forward, elbows on the table. "More of a computer nerd," he admitted. "Built my first program when I was 12. It was terrible, but I was hooked." Harper raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A tech guy, huh?" What do you do now? Oliver hesitated, his fingers tightening around his mug. I work from home. Tech stuff, mostly. Pretty boring compared to wrangling kindergartners. His vagueness piqued her curiosity, but Harper let it slide, sensing his reluctance. They talked instead about her classroom, her favorite moments, like when a shy student finally spoke up, or the chaos of finger paint days. Oliver listened intently, his eyes never straying to his phone or the room, a rarity that made Harper feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. She shared how she read picture books to her students, her voice animating the characters, and Oliver's quiet laughter felt like a gift. You make it sound like magic, he said, his gaze warm. Harper's cheeks heated, and she looked down at her latte, suddenly shy. Parker, now halfway through his coloring page, tugged at Oliver's sleeve. Can I have another chocolate milk? Oliver raised an eyebrow, mock stern. One's enough, buddy. You'll be bouncing to Mars otherwise. Harper chuckled, checking her watch. Her hour was nearly up. She needed to pick up Aunt Clara's medication soon. I should get going, she said, gathering her purse. Oliver's face fell just for a moment, before he masked it with a nod. Of course. Thank you again, Harper. For everything. As they stood, Parker looked up from his coloring. Will you come back to the park, Harper? I can show you my rocket impression. Harper smiled, her heart softening at his earnestness. I come here sometimes, after tutoring on Thursdays, she said, surprising herself with the admission. No promises, but maybe I'll see you. Parker's face lit up, and Oliver's eyes held a quiet hope. They walked out together, Parker skipping between them, the park's golden light fading into dusk. At the street corner, Harper waved goodbye, Parker's enthusiastic wave mirroring her own. Thank you again, Oliver said softly, his voice carrying a weight that made her pause. For being kind. Harper walked away, her steps light despite the pull of her responsibilities. The cafe's warmth lingered in her chest, mingling with the spark of something new, a connection she hadn't sought but couldn't ignore. Oliver's guarded smile and Parker's bright giggle stayed with her, like stars flickering in a sky she hadn't realized was so vast. The air at Riverside Park carried a crisp edge, the late afternoon sun filtering through ancient oaks, casting dappled shadows across the playground. Harper Jones felt an unfamiliar pull as she approached the familiar wooden bench, her gold hairpin catching the light like a beacon in her neatly pinned curls. Her yellow sundress had been traded for a simple blue blouse and jeans, but the flutter in her chest was the same, one she'd tried to dismiss since her coffee with Oliver Reed and his son Parker days ago. She told herself she was here for fresh air, a brief escape from her whirlwind life of teaching, tutoring, and caring for Aunt Clara. But deep down, she knew she was hoping to see them again, those blue eyes filled with gratitude and a boy's infectious giggle. A shout broke her thoughts. Harper! Parker's voice rang out, clear and bright, as he barreled down the slide, his green rocket ship t-shirt unmistakable. His blonde hair bounced as he ran toward her, his sneakers kicking up sand. Harper's face lit up, her teacher's instinct kicking in as she knelt to meet him. Well, look at you, space explorer, she said, her voice warm. Planning a mission to Mars today? Parker grinned, nodding vigorously. Gonna find aliens. Before she could reply, Oliver appeared, his tall frame moving with a quiet confidence, though his smile held a nervous edge. We were hoping you'd show up, he said, his deep voice carrying a warmth that made Harper's pulse quicken. Parker tugged at her hand, pulling her toward the bench. We brought cookies, he announced, pointing to a plastic container Oliver carried. Dad made them. Oliver rubbed the back of his neck, a sheepish grin softening his features. Parker insisted we needed cookies in case we ran into you, he admitted, setting the container down. Harper raised an eyebrow, teasing. So, you're a baker now? She opened the lid, revealing slightly misshapen chocolate chip cookies, their edges uneven but inviting. She took one, biting into it, and her eyes widened. These are good, she said, genuinely impressed. Parker beamed, bouncing on his toes. Told you, Dad's awesome. They settled on the bench, Parker scampering back to the slide, his laughter echoing as he climbed. Oliver offered Harper another cookie, his fingers brushing hers briefly, sending a spark through her that she tried to ignore. The park buzzed with life, children shrieking, parents chatting, but it felt like their own small world, carved out in the late afternoon glow. So, Harper said, leaning back, You and Parker come here a lot? Oliver nodded, his gaze following his son. It's our spot. He needs to be around other kids to feel normal. The word hung between them, heavy with implication, but Oliver didn't elaborate, and Harper didn't press. Instead, their conversation flowed effortlessly, like a river finding its course. Harper shared stories of her kindergartners, the boy who insisted his dog was an astronaut, the girl who painted her hands blue and called it alien skin. Oliver listened, his blue eyes locked on her, a quiet intensity that made her feel truly heard. You love it, don't you? He said, more statement than question. Harper nodded, her smile soft. They keep me grounded. No matter how tough things get, their honesty pulls me back. She paused, then ventured, What about you? What keeps you grounded? Oliver's expression flickered, a shadow passing over his face. Parker, he said simply, everything I do is for him. Harper sensed a story behind his guarded tone but shifted to lighter ground. He's a great kid. Must get it from his dad. Oliver's laugh was low, almost self-deprecating. I'm learning as I go. Well, it's just us now. The words carried a weight, a hint of loss, and Harper's heart ached for him. She wanted to ask more but held back, respecting the boundary in his eyes. Instead, she turned to Parker, now swinging high, and called out, Careful, Captain Parker. Don't launch into orbit. Parker giggled, pumping his legs harder, and Oliver's tension eased, his smile returning. They talked about favorite books, Harper's love for children's stories, Oliver's fondness for old sci-fi novels. He shared a memory of reading The Martian Chronicles as a kid, dreaming of distant planets, and Harper countered with her obsession with Charlotte's Web, its quiet lessons on kindness. The conversation danced from childhood dreams to silly moments, like the time Harper's class accidentally set off a glitter explosion. Oliver laughed, a sound that warmed her more than the sun. You're a natural storyteller, he said, his gaze lingering, making her cheeks flush. Parker ran back, breathless, holding a stick he'd found. Look, Harper, it's a lightsaber! Harper gasped dramatically. A lightsaber? You must be a Jedi! She grabbed a twig from the ground, brandishing it like a sword. On guard, young Jedi! Parker squealed, dueling her with exaggerated swings, while Oliver watched, his eyes crinkling with amusement. The playful battle ended with Parker declaring victory, collapsing onto the grass in giggles. Harper sat back, catching her breath, aware of Oliver's gaze. Steady, warm, and something more. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, Harper checked her watch. Aunt Clara needed her medication soon. I should head out, she said reluctantly, standing. Oliver's face fell, just for a moment, before he nodded. Thanks for humoring us, he said, his voice soft. Parker looked up, his blue eyes wide. Will you come back, Harper? I can show you my rocket impression. Harper smiled, her heart softening. I'm here sometimes after tutoring on Thursdays. Maybe I'll see you. Parker's face lit up, and Oliver's eyes held a quiet hope, a silent invitation. They walked to the park's edge, Parker skipping between them, swinging their hands. At the street corner, Harper waved goodbye, Parker's enthusiastic wave mirroring her own. Thank you, Harper, Oliver said, his voice low, carrying a sincerity that made her pause, for making today special. She nodded, her throat tight, and turned away, her steps lighter than they should have been. As she walked toward the bus stop, the park's sounds fading behind her, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. Oliver's quiet intensity, Parker's bright trust. It was more than a chance meeting. It was a thread, delicate but strong, weaving them together in ways she couldn't yet name. The bus climbed the winding roads of Crestwood Heights, its engine humming as it carried Harper Jones into a world far removed from her modest apartment and bustling kindergarten classroom. Her fingers tightened around the wrapped gift in her lap, a space encyclopedia for Parker, its glossy cover promising galaxies and wonder. Her floral dress, simple yet elegant, felt suddenly inadequate against the backdrop of manicured estates and gleaming gates. Her gold hairpin, securing her sleek curls, caught the sunlight streaming through the window, a small anchor of confidence. Oliver Reed's invitation to Parker's 7th birthday party had seemed innocent enough in the park, but now as the bus slowed near an address that screamed wealth, Harper's stomach churned with doubt. Who was Oliver? And why had he been so vague about his life? She stepped off the bus, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass. The house, no, the mansion loomed before her, its modern glass walls reflecting the afternoon sun, its sprawling gardens framed by ornate iron gates. Harper's breath caught. This was no ordinary home. It was a fortress of privilege, a stark contrast to the cozy park benches where she'd laughed with Oliver and Parker. Her heart raced, a mix of curiosity and unease. She clutched the gift tighter, her teacher's resolve wavering. Had she misread their connection? Was she stepping into a world where she didn't belong? Before she could turn back, the gates swung open, and Oliver jogged down the driveway, his blonde hair slightly tousled, his blue eyes bright with relief. "Harper, you made it," he said, his smile genuine but tinged with nervousness. He wore khaki shorts and a blue button-down, sleeves rolled up, looking less like a billionaire and more like the dad she'd met in the park. "I was worried you'd get lost." Harper forced a smile, her voice betraying her surprise. "Your software company must do very well." Oliver's expression faltered, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. "I should have been more honest," he said quietly. "Can we talk inside?" Harper nodded, her curiosity outweighing her hesitation. As they walked up the driveway, a woman in a crisp uniform opened the front door, nodding respectfully. "Thank you, Maria," Oliver said. "Is everything ready for the party?" "Yes, Mr. Reed," Maria replied. "The cake's in the kitchen, decorations in the backyard." Harper's grip on the gift tightened. Mr. Reed, staff. This was a world she'd only seen in movies, and it made her feel like an intruder. The mansion's interior was breathtaking yet oddly lived in. Modern lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, but also Parker's toys scattered across a plush rug. A coloring book open on a sleek coffee table. It was a home, despite its grandeur. Oliver led her to a quiet sitting room, its walls lined with bookshelves, a soft leather sofa, inviting but intimidating. "I wanted a moment before the party," he said, gesturing for her to sit. Harper perched on the edge of the sofa, her floral dress a stark contrast to its luxury. "Explain what exactly?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "Who are you, Oliver?" He ran a hand through his hair, his discomfort palpable. "My full name is Oliver Reed, founder of Reed Innovations. We develop AI software for corporations and governments. I started it 15 years ago, and it grew bigger than I ever imagined." Harper's eyes widened. Reed Innovations was a titan, its name splashed across tech headlines, its founder a billionaire, whose face she'd glimpsed in forgotten news articles. "You're that Oliver Reed?" she asked, the realization hitting like a wave. "Why didn't you tell me?" Oliver sat across from her, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "Because when we met, you saw me as Parker's dad, not a headline. After my divorce, I stepped back from public life to protect Parker. The tabloids, the scrutiny, it was too much. You were so kind, so real. I didn't want to ruin that by dragging my world into yours." His vulnerability disarmed her, the sincerity in his blue eyes chipping away at her hurt. "But this is your world," she said, gesturing to the mansion around them. "The real you." Oliver shook his head, his voice firm. "No, Harper. The real me is the guy you met in the park. The one who burns cookies and worries about his kid. This," he waved a hand at the room, "is just circumstances." Harper wanted to believe him, but the gap between their lives felt like a chasm. Before she could respond, the door burst open, and Parker ran in, his face lighting up. "Harper, you came!" He threw himself into her arms, and her confusion melted under his warmth. "Happy birthday, Parker," she said, handing him the gift. He tore into the wrapping, his eyes sparkling as he revealed the space encyclopedia. "Dinosaurs and stars," he shouted, flipping through pages of nebulae and planets. "Dad, look, it's got Mars." Oliver's gaze softened, meeting Harper's over Parker's head. "That's amazing, buddy," he said, but his eyes were on her, full of gratitude and something deeper. The party was small, held in the backyard under a canopy of fairy lights. Just Parker, his nanny Emma, two boys from his playgroup, and their mothers, who cast curious glances at Harper. A rocket-shaped cake dominated the table, its icing gleaming under the sun. Parker dragged Harper to play, his laughter infectious as they chased each other around a makeshift spaceship made of cardboard. Oliver watched, joining in with a playful roar that made the kids squeal. Harper caught his eye, and for a moment, the mansion, the wealth, faded. It was just them, a dad and a teacher, laughing with a joyful boy. As the party wound down, Oliver walked Harper to the front door, Parker trailing behind, clutching his new book. "Thank you for staying," Oliver said, his voice low. It meant everything to Parker, and me. Harper smiled, her heart torn between warmth and the weight of his revelation. "I had a good time," she said honestly. "Your home is incredible." Oliver shrugged, his eyes never leaving hers. "It's just a house. It doesn't feel like a home without—" He trailed off, a flush creeping up his neck. Harper's pulse quickened, but she didn't press. "I should go," she said, stepping toward the driveway. "Happy birthday again, Parker." She winked at him, earning a grin. As she walked away, the mansion's shadow loomed behind her, a reminder of the world Oliver inhabited. Yet his sincerity, his devotion to Parker, lingered in her mind, pulling her back to the man she'd met in the park. She couldn't shake the feeling that this day, this revelation, was a turning point, one that might lead her somewhere she never expected. Harper Jones woke to the insistent buzz of her phone, the morning light filtering through the faded curtains of her modest apartment. Her gold hairpin lay on the bedside table, a quiet reminder of the joy she'd felt at Parker's birthday party, where Oliver Reed's revelation had turned her world upside down. She rubbed sleep from her eyes, expecting a routine notification, perhaps a message from Aunt Clara or a reminder about her kindergarten class. Instead, her screen glowed with a flood of texts and alerts, each one a jolt to her heart. Colleagues, neighbors, even parents of her students. Messages piled up, all asking the same question. Is it true? Her stomach twisted as she opened a link sent by a coworker, and the world tilted beneath her. A grainy photo filled her screen. Her and Oliver in Riverside Park, their faces close, his hand brushing hers. The headline screamed, "Billionaire Oliver Reed's secret romance with kindergarten teacher." Harper's breath caught, her name, Harper Jones, sprawled across the article, alongside her job at Willow Creek Elementary and an estimate of her modest salary. The words cut deeper as she scrolled. Is this true love, or is Ms. Jones just another woman dazzled by Reed's fortune? The article speculated about her motives, painting her as a gold digger chasing Oliver's billions. Comments below were worse, strangers dissecting her life, mocking her simple dresses, questioning her integrity. Her phone slipped from her hand, landing on the bed with a soft thud. She felt exposed, as if the world had ripped open her private heart and strewn it across the internet. The phone rang, Oliver's name flashing. Harper hesitated, her fingers trembling, but answered. "Harper, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice raw with anguish. "I just saw it. My lawyers are contacting the publication right now." She clutched the phone, her voice shaking. "They used my full name, Oliver. My job, my salary. Parents from my school are commenting. This could cost me everything." His silence was heavy, broken only by a quiet, "I know. I'm trying to fix this." Harper's throat tightened. "I need time," she said, hanging up before he could respond. She couldn't bear the pain in his voice, not when her world was unraveling. Her phone buzzed again. Ms. Carter, her principal, requested a meeting before school. Harper's heart sank. She dressed carefully, choosing a crisp blouse and skirt, her gold hairpin securing her curls with a defiance she didn't feel. The walk to Willow Creek Elementary was a blur, the familiar streets now menacing, as if eyes watched from every corner. In Ms. Carter's office, the air was thick with tension. The principal, usually warm, looked uncomfortable, her hands folded tightly on her desk. "Harper, I'll be direct," she said. "Several parents have raised concerns about your relationship with Mr. Reed. They're worried about paparazzi showing up, about their children being photographed." Harper's chest tightened, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "My personal life has nothing to do with my teaching." Miss Carter sighed, her eyes sympathetic but resolute. "Ordinarily, I'd agree. But this is complicated. We need to protect the students. I'm asking you to take personal time until this blows over." The words hit like a slap, polite but final. Harper's eyes burned, but she held back tears. "I love my students," she said, her voice breaking. "I'd never put them at risk." Miss Carter nodded, her expression softening. "I know, Harper. This isn't personal. It's just the situation. Harper walked out, the school's bright hallways now a maze of betrayal. Her career, her sanctuary, was slipping away because she dared to care for a man and his son. Back at her apartment, Harper sank onto the couch, the weight of the morning crushing her. Aunt Clara emerged from her room, leaning on her cane, the newspaper in her hand open to the society pages. "You've made quite the splash, baby girl," she said dryly, settling beside Harper. Harper groaned, burying her face in her hands. "This is a nightmare, Aunt Clara. They're calling me a gold digger. My job's at stake." Clara's eyes, sharp despite her frailty, studied her. "Is it a nightmare because of what they're saying, or because you're falling for that man?" Harper froze, the question cutting through her turmoil. She hadn't admitted it to herself, but Oliver's kind eyes, Parker's bright laughter, they'd woven themselves into her heart. "I don't know," Harper whispered, her voice raw. "I just wanted to help a kid." Clara patted her hand, her touch warm and steady. "You did, and maybe you found something more. But since when do you care what strangers think? The Harper I raised knows her own heart." Harper wanted to believe her, but the sting of exposure was too fresh. She avoided Riverside Park, ignoring Oliver's calls, responding only with brief texts. "I'm okay. Need space." Each message from him grew more worried, his words laced with a sadness that mirrored her own. Then a small envelope arrived, slipped under her door. Inside was a drawing from Parker. 3 stick figures labeled Dad, Harper, and me, standing in a park with a squirrel scribbling notes. Underneath in Oliver's neat handwriting, "We miss you at the park. The spy squirrels are getting away with everything." Harper's heart cracked at Parker's words, the paper trembling in her hands. She could see his bright grin, hear his giggle as they'd spun tales of interstellar rodents. And Oliver, his quiet intensity, the way he listened like she was the only person in the world. But the tabloid's venom lingered, tainting those memories. She tucked the drawing into a drawer, unable to face it, and busied herself with Aunt Clara's care, avoiding the outside world where photographers might lurk. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in as she wrestled with her fear and longing. That evening, Clara watched her with growing impatience. "You're hiding, Harper," she said, her voice sharp. "You're in love with that man and his boy. Why let gossip steal that from you?" Harper shook her head, her voice tight. "It's not just gossip. It's my job, my reputation. His world comes with a spotlight I didn't ask for." Clara's eyes softened, but her tone held no compromise. "Life's too short to run from what makes you happy. You've always put others first. Your students, me. Maybe it's time to choose yourself." Harper lay awake that night, Clara's words echoing alongside the tabloid's cruel headlines. The drawing haunted her, Parker's innocent hope, a stark contrast to the world's judgment. She thought of Oliver's gratitude, his guarded smile, the way he looked at her like she was more than a teacher, more than a headline. Could she face the storm of his world for a chance at something real? As sleep eluded her, Harper felt the pull of Riverside Park, of the bench where it all began, and the fragile thread of connection that refused to break. The air in Harper Jones's small apartment felt stifling, the weight of a week's isolation pressing against her chest. Her modest living room, usually a haven of warmth with its faded couch and Aunt Clara's knitted throws, now seemed a cage, trapping her in a whirl of doubt and fear. The tabloid storm had upended her life, costing her job security and exposing her to strangers' cruel judgments. Her gold hairpin rested on the coffee table, its gleam dulled by the dim morning light filtering through the curtains. Harper paced, her bare feet soft against the worn rug, avoiding the world outside where photographers might lurk. Aunt Clara's words from the night before echoed, "Why let gossip steal your happiness?" But the sting of betrayal, of her private life splashed across headlines, held her back. Then a soft knock at the door broke the silence. Harper opened it cautiously, half expecting a nosy neighbor or worse, a reporter. Instead, Maria, Oliver Reed's housekeeper, stood there, her expression kind but urgent. "Mr. Reed asked me to deliver this," she said, handing Harper a plain white envelope. "He said it's important." Harper's heart skipped, her fingers trembling as she took it. Maria offered a small smile and left, leaving Harper alone with the weight of the envelope. She sank onto the couch, the paper cool against her skin. Oliver's neat handwriting spelled her name on the front, a simple gesture that felt intimate, vulnerable. She hesitated, fear and longing warring within her, then tore it open, unfolding a letter that carried the promise of truth. Harper, it began, I understand why you needed space. The invasion of your privacy was unforgivable, and I feel responsible. You didn't ask for my world's chaos, but you should know that meeting you changed me. I've spent years hiding, protecting Parker from the spotlight, but also shielding myself from hurt. Your kindness, your stories, your laughter. You showed me what it means to live openly, to connect without walls. I've brought chaos to your ordered life, and I'm sorry. I've taken steps to fix what I can. My lawyers have sent cease and desist letters to the publications. I've offered to fund security at your school, and I'm looking at houses in normal neighborhoods, places where Parker can ride a bike, and you might feel at home. I want you in our lives, Harper, as part of our family. Parker asks for you daily. The park isn't the same without you, neither are we. I love you, simply, completely, because you see me, not the billionaire, just me. If you can forgive the chaos, meet me at our bench tomorrow at noon. No photographers, just us. Whatever you decide, thank you for showing me what happiness feels like. All my love, Oliver. Harper read it twice, tears blurring the words. Each sentence was a thread, pulling her back to the park, to Parker's giggles, to Oliver's steady gaze. She clutched the letter, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Aunt Clara emerged from her room, cane tapping softly, and noticed the tears. What's that, baby girl? She asked, settling beside Harper. Wordlessly, Harper handed her the letter. Clara read it, her sharp eyes softening. Well, she said, folding it carefully, that's a man who knows his heart. What does yours say? Harper closed her eyes, picturing Oliver's nervous smile, Parker's rocket ship t-shirt, and the warmth of their shared moments. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. But I miss them. Clara took her hand, her grip firm despite her frailty. You've always been brave, Harper. You raised me as much as I raised you. Don't let fear steal what could be. Harper nodded, her resolve hardening. She thought of the tabloid's venom, the parents' judgmental texts, the suspension from her job. But then she thought of a life without Oliver and Parker, and it felt emptier than any headline could. I need to go to the park, she said, her voice steady now. Clara smiled, a glint of pride in her eyes. I thought you might. The next morning, Harper dressed with care, choosing her yellow sundress, the same one she'd worn when she first met Parker. Her gold hairpin gleamed as she pinned her curls, a quiet nod to that day's kindness. Her hands shook as she applied minimal makeup, nerves dancing beneath her skin. Clara watched from the doorway, leaning on her cane. You look beautiful, she said. Go get your heart, girl. Harper hugged her tightly, the warmth of Clara's embrace grounding her. I love you, she whispered. Love you too, Clara replied. Now go. Riverside Park was alive with children's laughter and the rustle of leaves, but Harper's focus was singular. Two men in suits stood discreetly by the entrance. Oliver's security, their nods respectful as she passed. Her pulse raced as she neared their usual bench, the one where she'd first comforted Parker. Would Oliver be there? Would he still look at her with that quiet hope? As she rounded the playground's corner, she stopped. There he was, sitting alone, his blonde hair catching the sun, his hands clasped tightly, betraying his nerves. He looked up, scanning the path, and then he saw her. The hope that bloomed across his face stole her breath, a radiant mix of relief and love. Harper, he said, standing, his voice soft but fervent. You came. She stopped a few feet away, her sundress swaying in the breeze. I came, she agreed, her voice trembling with emotion. Oliver took a step closer, his blue eyes searching hers. Did you read my letter? She nodded, clutching her purse to steady her hands. Every word. His expression softened, vulnerability raw in his gaze. I meant it all, especially the part about loving you. I don't want to lose you, Harper, not over things that don't matter. Her fears, the tabloids, the scrutiny, loomed, but his sincerity was a lifeline. I love you too, she whispered, the words slipping out like a confession. I tried to be sensible, but… Oliver closed the distance, his hand reaching for hers. Love isn't sensible, he said, a smile breaking through. It's messy, complicated, wonderful. Like us. When he leaned in, his kiss was gentle, warm, a promise that drowned out the world's noise. Harper knew in that moment she was home. The sun hung high over a quiet, tree-lined street, its rays dancing across the modest two-story house that stood in stark contrast to Oliver Reed's Crestwood Heights mansion. Harper Jones sat in the passenger seat of Oliver's sleek but understated SUV, her gold hairpin catching the light as her curls framed her face. Her yellow sundress clung to her, a symbol of the day she'd first met Parker, now a touchstone of their journey. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. Oliver had promised a new start, a home free from the trappings of his billionaire life. And as they pulled into the driveway of the greenhouse, as Parker had dubbed it, Harper felt the stirrings of a future she hadn't dared to dream. Parker bounded out of the back seat, his rocket ship t-shirt vibrant against the house's white-clapboard exterior. "Harper, come see!" he shouted, his blonde hair bouncing as he tugged her hand. The house was charming, with a wraparound porch and a small, grassy yard framed by a low picket fence. It was nothing like the glass and steel fortress of Oliver's old life. Here, children's bikes littered neighboring lawns, and laughter spilled from a nearby park. Oliver stepped out, his blue eyes bright with a nervous hope. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice low, as if the answer held his entire world. Harper took it in, the green shutters, the flower boxes waiting to be filled, the porch swing creaking gently in the breeze. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice soft but honest. "But Oliver, you don't have to change everything for me." He shook his head, stepping closer, his hand brushing hers. "This isn't a change, it's a choice. The mansion was a fortress, not a home. This feels right, for Parker, for us." His words carried a quiet conviction, and Harper's heart swelled, the gap between their worlds narrowing with every syllable. Parker grabbed her other hand, pulling her toward the front door. "Come see my room," he insisted, his excitement infectious. Inside, the house was warm and inviting. Hardwood floors gleamed under large windows, and an open kitchen flowed into a cozy living room. It was spacious yet unpretentious, with space for Parker's toys and Harper's books. Oliver followed, his gaze never leaving her, as if gauging her reaction to every detail. "The sale's almost final," he said as they climbed the stairs. "It just needs one more signature." Harper raised an eyebrow. "Yours?" Oliver smiled, a mix of nerves and warmth. "No, I've signed. I meant yours, if you want it to be ours." The words hung between them, heavy with promise. Parker led her to a blue-painted room, its built-in bookshelves and window seat perfect for a 6-year-old dreamer. "This is mine," he declared, pointing to a wall where he'd already taped a rocket drawing. "And Dad says the room next to it could be yours." Harper's eyes widened, turning to Oliver, who looked sheepish. "I got ahead of myself," he admitted, rubbing his neck. "But I wanted Parker to know it's a possibility, if you're ready." Harper's throat tightened, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. She knelt to Parker's level. "Would you like that if I were part of your family?" Parker nodded, his blue eyes earnest. "You make Dad smile, and you know about spy squirrels." Harper laughed, her heart squeezing at his sincerity. Oliver stood in the doorway, his expression tender. "High praise," he said, his voice soft. They toured the rest of the house, a smaller room for Harper with an ensuite bathroom, a ground-floor guest suite for Aunt Clara, its accessibility a thoughtful touch. "I thought of her," Oliver said quietly. "No more climbing stairs. She could have her own space if she'd consider it." Harper stared at him, her eyes glistening. "You've thought of everything," she whispered. Oliver took her hands, his grip warm and steady. "I've thought about a life with you. The rest is just details." They stepped into the backyard where Parker ran to explore a small treehouse. The city hummed in the distance, but here it felt like a sanctuary. Harper could imagine mornings here, sipping coffee on the porch, Parker's laughter filling the air. "Are you sure, Ma?" she asked, turning to Oliver. "This is a big change." He nodded, his eyes unwavering. "I've never been sure, except about you." His words were a vow, and Harper felt the last of her doubts dissolve. "I want this," she said, her voice steady. "I want us." Oliver's smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. He pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead, a silent promise. Parker ran back, holding a stick. "Look, Harper, a space wand." She laughed, ruffling his hair. "Better not zap us to Mars yet, Captain." They spent the afternoon in the yard, Parker leading them on imaginary missions, Oliver and Harper stealing glances that spoke of a shared future. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the greenhouse, Harper felt a peace she hadn't known she craved. Back at her apartment that evening, Harper sat with Aunt Clara, the letter from Oliver folded on the table. She shared the day's events, the house, Oliver's offer, the room for Clara. "He thought of you," Harper said, her voice thick with emotion. Clara's eyes, sharp despite her frailty, studied her. "Sounds like a man building a home, not just a house," she said. Harper nodded, her decision settling like a stone in a quiet pond. "I'm going to move in," she said, the words both terrifying and exhilarating. Clara smiled, patting her hand. "Good. You deserve a family, baby girl." As Harper lay in bed that night, the greenhouse filled her thoughts. Not its walls or floors, but the life it promised. Oliver's steady presence, Parker's boundless joy, in a place where she could belong. The tabloid storm still lingered, a shadow on the horizon, but in that moment, it felt surmountable. She was choosing love, choosing them. And as she drifted to sleep, Harper knew the greenhouse was more than a new address. It was a new beginning, a promise of a family forged not by chance, but by choice. The backyard of the greenhouse glowed under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, the soft hum of a string quartet weaving through the warm evening air. Harper Jones stood under a simple arch of wildflowers, her white dress flowing like a whisper against her skin, her gold hairpin glinting in her neatly pinned curls. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with a joy so vivid it felt like it might burst. The small gathering, Oliver Reed's parents, a few of Harper's colleagues, neighbors who'd become friends, and Aunt Clara in the front row, watched with quiet smiles. Parker, resplendent in a tiny suit, stood proudly as ring-bearer, his rocket ship tie a nod to his boundless dreams. Harper's eyes locked on Oliver, waiting under the arch, his blue eyes radiant with love, his blonde hair catching the fading sunlight. This was their moment, the culmination of a journey that began with a lost boy in a park. The quartet's melody softened, signaling her entrance. Harper took a deep breath, her steps steady as she walked alone down the makeshift aisle. Her choice to stand on her own, a testament to her strength. Aunt Clara's eyes shone with pride, her cane resting beside her, a silent witness to Harper's transformation. Parker grinned, clutching the ring pillow with fierce concentration, his earlier practice sessions evident in his careful steps. Oliver's face transformed as he saw her, a smile so pure it stole her breath. "You're breathtaking," he whispered when she reached him, his hands taking hers warm and steady. "So are you," she whispered back, her voice trembling with emotion. The ceremony was intimate, their vows handwritten and heartfelt. Oliver spoke first, his voice clear yet thick with feeling. "Harper, you walked into our lives with kindness, seeing past the noise to the man I am. You loved Parker without reservation and made our house a home. I promise to stand by you, to build a life where love comes first always." Harper's eyes glistened, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Oliver, you saw me, every part of me, and loved me for it. You gave me a family, a home, a future. I promise to face every challenge with you, to cherish you and Parker, to make our love our strength." Their words hung in the air, binding them in a promise as tangible as the rings they exchanged. Parker stepped forward, his small face serious as he presented the rings. Oliver slipped a simple band onto Harper's finger, his voice breaking from the script. "This ring belongs to the woman who showed me what love looks like, who makes every day brighter." Harper placed Oliver's ring on his finger, adding her own words. "This is for the man who values what matters, who gave me a family to call my own." The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and as Oliver kissed her, gentle, warm, seal of their vows, the garden erupted in soft applause, every eye misty with emotion. The reception spilled onto the patio, laughter and music filling the night. Neighbors toasted with homemade lemonade, and Marco, the cafe owner, insisted on serving his signature tiramisu. Parker, freed from his ring-bearer duties, darted among the guests, showing off his rocket tie. Then, with a clink of his juice glass, he demanded attention. "I have a present for Harper," he announced, his voice cutting through the chatter. With Oliver's help, he handed her a flat package wrapped in paper covered with rocket ships. Harper knelt, unwrapping it carefully to reveal a framed drawing. Three stick figures, Oliver, Harper, and Parker, holding hands in front of the greenhouse, a squirrel scribbling nearby. In Parker's careful scrawl, it read, "Our family." Harper's breath caught, tears spilling as she hugged Parker. "I made it the day we met," he said, his voice earnest. "When you helped me, I knew you were special." She held him close, her voice choked. "This is the best gift ever, Parker. I'll keep it forever." Oliver's hand rested on her shoulder, his eyes mirroring her emotion. The guests murmured their approval, the moment a quiet testament to their bond. As the evening deepened, Harper and Oliver found a moment alone on the porch swing, the fairy lights casting a soft glow. Parker showed Aunt Clara how to catch fireflies, their laughter a gentle backdrop. "Happy?" Oliver asked, his arm around her. "Beyond happy," Harper replied, leaning into him. "I never knew life could feel this complete." He kissed her forehead, his voice soft. "Because of you, Harper. You filled our empty spaces." She smiled, correcting him gently. "We filled each other's spaces. That's what families do." A sudden flash broke the moment. A photographer, hidden in the shadows, camera clicking rapidly. Harper froze, old fears surging, but Oliver stood, shielding her. "This is Harper Jones, the woman I love," he said calmly to the intruder. "That's all you need to know." Taking her hand, he led her back to the party, ignoring the shouted questions. Inside, Harper's heart steadied. "That's my reality," Oliver said, apologetic but resolute. "But we'll face it together." Harper squeezed his hand. "Together sounds perfect." As the night wound down, they gathered on the porch, Harper and Oliver on the swing, Parker curled between them, Clara watching with a contented smile. Fireflies danced in the dusk, and the greenhouse stood as their haven, a testament to their chosen family. Harper looked at Oliver, his eyes reflecting the stars above, and knew that this, love, trust, a boy's bright laughter, was worth any storm. They had found each other in a sandbox, and now they were home forever. Thank you for joining Harper, Oliver, and Parker on their heartfelt journey from a chance encounter to a forever family. We hope their story of kindness, love, and resilience touched your heart. What did you think of their tale? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're listening from. Your feedback means the world to us, so don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that warm the soul. Until next time, keep spreading kindness. It just might change a life. See you soon.